Welcome to Tower Talk Business Radio, where we bring you conversations with the top business minds on Long Island and around the nation every week. Featuring expert consultants and small business owners who have found success but are also willing to share their top tips, failures, and give gritty, matter-of-fact advice based on their firsthand experience. Now, let's get down to business on Tower Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College, 90.3 WHPC.
Hello and welcome to Tower Talk Business Radio. My name is Ray Schwetz, AVP of Business Banking at Jovia Financial Credit Union. We're focused on being the premier resource for business and entrepreneurship. We bring you weekly advice, tips, tools, and services that help you grow your business. Plus, we interview the top business and community leadership in the industry. Today, we are honored to have our guest on Tower Talk, Jose Dominguez, and he is the Chief Executive Officer of American Red Cross on Long Island. So a little bit about American Red Cross. They prevent and alleviate human suffering in the face of emergencies by mobilizing the power of volunteers and the generosity of their donors. Each day, they provide compassionate care to those in need, and they teach life-saving skills so that our communities can be better prepared when the needs arise. So Red Cross is needed every day. So, Jose, welcome to the show. Thank you for coming on board today.
Thank you, Ray, for having me. This is going to be amazing.
I'm very excited to share the good work that Red Cross does. Before we do, though, just tell me a little bit about yourself, how you got involved with American Red Cross.
Oh my gosh, it's a long journey. How much time do we have?
Yes, sir.
About 20 years ago, it's going to be 20 years in March that I've joined the organization. And what really led me to something different, I was majoring in music and lived in New York City, transplanted from Texas, wanted to pursue a career in music and opera. And sadly, 9/11 happened just at that time, a year later that I moved into Manhattan. We were a witness. I was working for a luxury brand and in their legal department, and sadly witnessed what happened that devastating day that we were all impacted by. And I needed to do something to help. I couldn't get home. I lived in Harlem at the time. Everything was just paralyzed, the entire city, as you can recall. And sadly, I went over to my colleague's apartment, and we were just, filled with anxiety and fear and rage, and just wanted to figure out what the answers were, what was happening. And so we left her apartment. We tried to go back into the community to figure out what was happening, just see what we can do to help. And there, is our logo. There's our brand, the big Red Cross. And volunteers were unloading there at the Javits Center, and we're unloading water. And I just went up to a volunteer that was wearing a red vest and asked if I can help in any way. And they, of course, referred me back to signing up to volunteer, which is our process, to go and sign up. And I was like, well, you have a lot of water that you're unloading. Can I just, pitch in and help? And he was like, sure, and that's what I did. I just started unloading water from the box truck, and then we put it on ice and we started handing it out, and it was just the most surreal moment, I would say, only because people started arriving from downtown and covered in dust, and and it was kind of interesting. The volunteers that were there with me referred to these individuals as ghosts because they were just covered in white dust.
Wow.
So it was a very powerful day and just something that I'll never forget. It's instilled in me. But that was the first time that, I actually worked alongside the Red Cross volunteers and understood their mission.
When you roll up your sleeves in a moment like that, a moment of crisis, and that's your response, that says a lot about you, and it says a lot about the organization that's doing that work. Similarly, I had a transformative moment, worked with nonprofits for years in the banking sector. During COVID, when Long Island Harvest was doing their food distribution at Nassau Coliseum, to me that was just amazing because you saw the sheer volume and number of people who came that needed help, and you're handing out food and all that, and these are people are walking up because they don't have a car. People are driving up in Mercedes.
Very much.
Where it was like a eye-opening moment just to show that people are in need in every stage or every economic division or however you want to slice it and dice it. It's just everybody needs help at some point.
And that is the beauty of our mission of the Red Cross. We do help everyone in need. Doesn't matter, what your socioeconomic status is. Very interestingly enough, I love Island Harvest, and I love both of our food banks that we work very closely with during disasters. Our youth clubs go and volunteer at the food banks as well. And having conversations with the CEOs of these two very respectful food banks, There it was shocking to hear that people are food insecure and they're making $80,000. And I'm a new native of Long Island, transplanted from Texas to Manhattan to here, and for this wonderful job. And it was a culture shock, but it was also very surreal just to hear how expensive it could be to live here. Yes. And going into the grocery store, and I'm sure I'm not the only one, but you walk out with a couple of groceries and it's over $100. So I start thinking about that. I start thinking about those that we serve, that are underserved, that do live in a vulnerable community, and I'm curious to know how they survive. And so whatever we can do to partner with food banks, or if they're in a case of disaster, by all means, we're always there to help, and that's the beauty of it.
Yeah, and I applaud you and your organization for having that mindset, because that to me is truly the evolution of nonprofits, that they know, hey, it's through collaboration. Yes. Let's not worry so much about all right, well, this donor might get exposed to my mission or another mission, and they might want to also help them. No, let's worry about the people that we're serving, and that collaboration makes it happen.
It is so important. Not only do we partner with our nonprofits, and there's so many wonderful nonprofits here on Long Island. That's another thing that I learned. But with our local elected officials, who really, when we go lobbying in Albany and, in January, and then we do go to D.C. as well, there's a sole purpose, and that's to get funding for all the services that we provide, whether it's blood services, whether it's disaster services, service to the armed forces, CPR and first aid training, preparedness training. This is all in order for us to make communities resilient, and all the services that we provide, most of the services with the exception of, I would say, CPR and first aid, all of our services are free. Wow. We do teach hands-only CPR as well, and that's free as well. But the other courses to get certified, we do charge a small fee.
Well, and that's understandable because of the amount of effort and all that's involved in that, and staff and so forth. Can you tell me a little bit about what your day-to-day is like? Because I have this preconceived notion of what it is. I'm sure it's completely way off. What's it like for you?
Of course, my day is pretty boring because I'm the administration side of the house. Our volunteers, who make up 90% of our workforce across the country, here on Long Island, we have a little over 1,000 volunteers, and 600 of those are solely disaster volunteers. That's what they train for. That's what they go out and respond. But on a typical day, we've been seeing an increase, and now that we're going into the fall and winter, we'll see an increase in house fires because of space heaters, and that's where we start teaching communities to really think about their surroundings, think about their Christmas trees, make sure you test. This is where we're all starting to get primed for that season. And sadly, we always see an increase of responses during the winter season because of that. But right now, it's really our volunteers are preparing. We're in hurricane season. Hurricane Helene just hit Florida. So we have a good dozen volunteers from our region, the greater New York region, that have deployed to that area to provide services as well. And that's the beauty of the Red Cross. If you volunteer, services are free. We do train you. Everything's free as far as that's concerned. And you get the opportunity to actually go to other parts of the country for deployment to respond to these large disasters. Hurricane Sandy, we had over 3,000 volunteers from across the country and across actually the world. We had international help as well that came into New York and New Jersey and provided services for those many, many months that we were here responding. So, and every day, I would say, it's a tragedy for any individual to lose their home. So our majority of responses are house fires or apartment fires. Here on Long Island, we probably respond to at least one or two a day. Mm-hmm. We also work very closely with the fire departments, which I was shocked. And all of them, the fire departments are all volunteer fire departments with the exception of a couple. And I'm like, this is insane. This is insane. But it goes to show that there are so many humanitarian people here on Long Island because of that's happening. We have all of these volunteers that are donating their time and sometimes donate their treasure as well to the Red Cross. It's an amazing place to be. So I'm really excited by that.
Yeah, I agree. It's we're very lucky. We have such a wealth of resources and good people. Now, I'm sure that there are some misconceptions in the services that you offer. So just to clarify for folks, what are the specific, the top 3 or maybe even the top 5 items that American Red Cross is very specifically focused on?
It depends on who you talk to, because most of the time when you mention the Red Cross, I gave blood, and I'm like, that is wonderful. Thank you for giving the gift of life. I can tell you on Long Island, we do not collect blood. And we do distribute to a couple of hospitals here, but we do not collect blood. But I wouldn't say competitor, but our partner is New York Blood. New York Blood, who is here on Long Island. So they do have all of the services that they provide there. So if anybody wants to donate blood here on Long Island, we encourage them to go to New York Blood Center. They are a wonderful partner, and it's you're giving such a wonderful resource that saves people. Red Cross, as far as our blood banks are concerned, my husband and I, of 23 years, we donated blood for the first time because there was a ban that was lifted for gay men, and it was wonderful. It was absolutely wonderful. So it was such a moment in our lives to go together and give. And we went to our Greenwich Blood Center in Greenwich, Connecticut. It's the closest one that is there in our Red Cross office. So it was really a great moment to be able to sit there and donate blood finally. I had never given blood. My husband, I think it was over 30 years since he's given blood.
Wow.
And it was a wonderful moment, a new chapter in our life, in our relationship.
And I just think it's amazing that such a barrier was in place. I'm glad to hear that it's no longer in place.
It is we are progressing, and we're working very diligently with our partners to help lift even some other exclusivities that are in donating blood. That really is more inclusive to everyone. But we're getting there. The other, I would say, we're not a government entity. We do not receive funding from the government. It's through donors, generosity of donors and corporations who sponsor our galas or events, things like that. But and other misconceptions are we're not just blood. We do respond to disasters. We have our preparedness and resiliency programs as well. Training services, our CPR, first aid, water safety. So most of the lifeguards around here, probably with Park City and Parks, are probably trained by a Red Cross instructor as well. So it's pretty. We provide just an immense amount of services, and then beyond that, it's just the compassion and our volunteers that really do all the work for us.
Yes, and the reason that I asked that question is that I myself had a lot of those misconceptions, thinking that the focus was on giving blood, and it's just through some of the things that you see. So I think it's important that folks know the breadth of the services that you offer. It's truly incredible. You are listening to Tower Talk Business Radio on the voice of Nassau Community College. My name is Ray Schwetz, along with Denisha Boston Hill, and our guest today is Jose Dominguez. He is the Chief Executive Officer of American Red Cross on Long Island. Now, Jose, can you share with me a story of, I'm sure there are, I know there are many, of a family that was impacted by something or a situation where an area was impacted by something and Red Cross was there to help, and how that came through, how that worked?
Recently, I would say it's a couple of months ago, we had an individual who had just moved into her home. She was a veteran, and sadly, a car ran into her house, destroying her house. And she was renting. And so, there are some challenges that come with anybody who rents a home because, of course, there's insurance. If you have renter's insurance, things like that. If you don't, then it becomes a bit more challenging. But because, we have a service to the Armed Forces Department, and our volunteers responded to her home and to this response, we were able to give her some financial assistance like we typically do, but we extended the services beyond to more long-term recovery to help her find a home. And I have to say, working through the channels of and with no disregard to systems, because we all have systems for a reason, but there was a lot of red tape to get through, some of the services that were provided to veterans, especially here in Long Island. And it really took our Director of Service to the Armed Forces to work with our partners, in the VA system, in local government, to try to really highlight the fact that this is a person that served for many years in the military, and we couldn't find her a home. We found her a space in a shelter, but obviously, a shelter, as much as it's a wonderful temporary resource, but for long term, no one wants to live in something that uncomfortable. And I've slept in many shelters before in deployments, but so I can only imagine, especially having the stress, the anxiety. You just lost your belongings, and she was able to salvage some things, but she no longer had a place to live. And so we went above and beyond for this individual, and she was so lovely. But more so than anything, what pulled at our heartstrings was this is a person that put her life on the line for our country, and she's already been through so much. Yeah, been through so much. So we were determined we were determined that we were going to try to get her as much help and resources available. And we did finally get her and find her an apartment through the help of some other military aid societies as well. So it was talk about collaboration. That was a great collaborative effort, but it took a couple of months. Wow. And I'm thinking, wow, it's just this light bulb. Why does it take so long? I mean, this is the United States of America. So, and we can go down that path and just talk about, some shortcomings, but it was a pretty wonderful thing. We all celebrated. We celebrated with her. We recognized her at our event, and she went up and gave a speech, and she brought us all to tears, just about how generous that, our team was, our volunteers were. She remembered each of their names, and wow. So it was really nice for them to gather and, have a reunion of sort and help her move into her home as well.
You'll never forget the helpers.
I never forget that, yeah.
And I think that's so important because it's those stories that move people and move donors to realize, hey, this is why I need to be a part of this. This is why I need to contribute. Now, one of the misconceptions I had going in was that you are government funded. Yeah. And I don't know if it's just the name American Red Cross, I'm not sure, or maybe just the length of service.
Yeah.
You folks have been around for so long.
143 years.
I mean, that is just amazing.
I look really good for that age now. So.
You're holding up well. How is it that you really get the numbers? As a nonprofit, I mean, that's something that everyone's struggling with nowadays, is continuing to show people like what your differentiator is and how you make a difference and why folks should donate. So how is it that you're helping to kind of motivate and let people know how they can help?
So I want to go back to the misconception of a government agency. And I think, a lot of people see us, when they see us on TV, we're typically standing next to either FEMA or government officials, sure. Because they do invite us into these press conferences to give some sort of update of what we're doing and what resources are available. We're very fortunate because our brand is extremely strong and reputable. It is 143 years. And let me tell you, it's all about progression and evolving as well. So we have to keep up with the times, of today's times as well. And the Red Cross, I mean, that's the beauty of it. We hire talent, but we also have so many volunteers that provide, so much of their time and resources that we're able to reduce expenses in that way. So, which then, of course, we have a fundraising team that are rock stars. And we're talking across the country, we have nothing but fabulous fundraisers. We're a fundraising juggernaut. And it's because every day we're responding out there. We are providing resources. 92 cents or 91 cents of every dollar goes directly back to client services, which is incredible. And we have a very, very good reputation amongst a Charity Navigator, and we're very proud of that as well.
I'm glad you bring that up, and I think that that's extremely important, that folks, when they're looking to support an organization, they look at these things. The program service percentage, American Red Cross on Long Island is fantastic in that regard, and the Charity Navigator for the reputation.
It's very much so. And so it is part of our education strategy to ensure that every member of communities, especially communities that are built of immigrants that probably don't have documentation, we provide services to everyone. And sadly, I've seen that firsthand coming from Texas and working in Texas with a huge population of Latino immigrants. That was one of the things that they would not do. They would not, and as a Latino myself, that's something that this community would not do. They wouldn't go to our shelters. I had to educate. I had to go talk to individuals and say, please, one story that just sticks to me is a 9-month pregnant woman with 2 other younger children, and she was the one that led the efforts to get people on the bus to go to a shelter when their apartment complex just burned down to the ground. And she and I were talking, we cried together, and she's like, I think I'm going into labor. Her husband had just been deported back to Mexico. So it was just, everything, but yet she had a smile on her face, and her kids were safe, and her husband was safe back in Mexico as well. And so she just gave me a different perspective, And I'm like, we're not part of the government. Please, we just want you to have a safe place to sleep. We'll provide, a cot, food, all the necessities that she needed. And she led her community, the people that lived in that apartment complex, and she told them to get on the bus and trust the Red Cross. So it was just a moving experience. My husband was there with me as well. He's a volunteer for the Red Cross, and he saw that firsthand, and we were all just like, yeah.
That truly brings it home.
It does bring it home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. So just from, I want to switch gears a little bit.
Yeah.
From a business perspective, you mentioned something, and I want to touch on that, the evolution of nonprofits. There's so many, the world is changing in so many ways. A lot of it is great. A lot of it brings challenges. From your perspective, being in the business 143 years,
right,
still looking good. Well, how do you see that evolving, like over the next year, 5 years? I mean, I'd like to see, like, all right, well, how are we going to plan for the next 5 years for nonprofits to continue to succeed in this environment? And how is this environment changing? But I feel like it almost changes daily. So how do you see things?
That is such a great point. One of the things that we're looking at, and we didn't have a choice, is climate change, the climate crisis that's happening. We're seeing an increase, I would say a good 30% increase of disasters that are costing more than $1 billion across the country. And Helene, I'm not sure, we're still wondering what type of destruction, but a Category 4 that hit, the Florida coast, and now it's turned into a Category 1. I think it's going to be a tropical storm by the time it gets to the Carolinas. But the devastation that it's caused, and that's because right after that, or right before it, was Idalia that hit Florida as well. Correct me if I'm wrong, but and caused devastation as well.
Yeah.
The wildfires in California that are continuing, in the West Coast, tremendous. And these are all $1 billion plus responses. So it is difficult for any nonprofit like us. I mean, we're very fortunate, but we are fundraising year round. We focus on these huge disasters, yes, because they're in the media, but we can't forget that locally, a house fire is a huge disaster to that individual as well. So we can't let our guard down in any way. We have to continuously be asking for assistance or for donations on an everyday basis. And that's that was the mindset that we changed several years ago, about 16 years ago, when we would fundraise after a disaster, but not during the year. So it was kind of interesting. And every chapter, not to go too deep in the weeds, but every chapter would fundraise for their own responses locally. And so now it's a huge group effort. I mean, talk about collaboration. It's huge. Yeah.
You are listening to Tara Talk Business Radio on the voice of National Community College, 90.3 WHPC. I'm Ray Schwetz, along with Denisha Boston Hill, and our guest today is Jose Dominguez. He is the Chief Executive Officer of American Red Cross on Long Island. Now, I want to go back to volunteerism. How can folks volunteer for the organization? How can folks give? How can folks get involved?
We're always looking for wonderful talent. You can go to www.redcross.org/Long Island, or LI for Long Island. Sorry. Or you can Google Red Cross Long Island, and it brings up our website. It's a very easy process. We do, of course, take security very seriously, and all of our wonderful volunteers go through a background check as well, because you're interacting with clients, people that have been distressed or in shelters, and so we want to be sure that everyone's safe as well. You can stop by I think that's probably the easiest way. You can go onto our website, redcross.org, and get as much preparedness materials as you want, just to teach yourself, educate yourself of what's available and what you can do to prepare for a hurricane, prepare for flooding, not lightning strikes, but electric outages, things like that. We have so many resources on preparedness on our website that are free of charge that anybody can go download and print.
And these are resources that folks should be aware of.
Very much so.
I'm glad that you bring that up. What organizations would you like to partner with? Do you have any big whales that you're looking for? Do you have any types of organizations that you wished you worked more with? Let's educate our listeners.
That is a great question. Yeah. I have to say one of the organizations, or there's several, obviously the food banks we work very closely with, and they're part of our emergency plan as well. Urban League of Long Island is one that we are currently in partnership with, and they are very interested. I don't know if you know this, but we also install free smoke alarms. If people want a smoke alarm or need a smoke alarm, all they have to do is go on the website and sign up as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So Urban League, when we were talking about that, they were very interested. They're a volunteer-led organization as well. And they were like, yes, we would love to help. And so they're working with our team. As a matter of fact, at 11 today, our team members, our subject matter experts in that field, are going to be talking to their board chair and their interim CEO. They are absolutely lovely people, and I'm very, very excited to be part of that. There's another group.
It's funny that you brought that up because I did just hear about that. I'm on the board for Urban League as well.
Are you really?
So we should
make
that's
sure
so
that cool.
we talk and make that happen.
That is so great. Thank you for doing that. Yeah, Sue Chen is just amazing.
She's amazing.
Yeah, and Jeffrey, I just met Jeffrey Johnson, who's the interim, and he's absolutely lovely. But
he is.
Yeah, and so I'm excited about that partnership, and it's been a long time coming, as Taylor Swift says. So very excited. But I mean, these are two very mission-driven organizations. Every single organization that we want to partner with have a very strong mission that's very similar to what we do. But there are so many nonprofits on Long Island, and that's the thing. I mean, anybody who wants to volunteer, I will always give a plug for any nonprofit that does amazing work. So just volunteer. That's what I would ask people to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. Great advice. Now, what's the one thought you want to make sure that you leave our listener with?
We are very, very grounded organization, established for 143 years. There are obviously going to be misconceptions, but the one thing that I can say that we're consistent at is providing these amazing services to community members, to every community member in need. We are committed to training and hoping that we can build stronger and resilient communities just by the power of educating people on what they can do. Nothing fancy. There's nothing fancy. It's not rocket science for us. For us, it's just, these are just some measures that you can take just to keep yourself safe. And we're very, very proud of the fact that we are led by volunteers. And this is a group of Long Islanders, just like everyone else, who just want to give back. So if you're interested, by all means, come join us.
And I think that's really key. It's that you have to show up.
Yep.
You have to show up. So great advice. How can folks find you? I know we talked about that earlier. Can you repeat?
Yeah.
Phone number, website, all that.
Website, www.redcross.org/LI for Long Island.
All right. So, Jose, amazing work that you're doing.
Thank you, Ray. Thank you for having me.
So I want to leave you with DB's philosophy. My co-host and producer, Denisha Boston Hill. The greater the obstacle, the more glory in overcoming it. Moliere. We want to thank you for being with us. My name is Ray Schwetz, along with Denisha Boston Hill, your co-host and producers. Visit nccradio.org for more information. We're available on Odyssey, TuneIn, iHeartRadio as a podcast in iTunes, Android Podcasts, and Spreaker. This has been Tower Talk Business Radio, powered by the voice of Knox Community College, 90.3 WHPC.